I don't want to introduce Tom Watson. I'm not going to take a huge stab at this because I think a lot of you already know Tom. I'm very pleased to introduce him as our morning chair, Parliament's first blogger, compulsive Twitter user, a real gamer to boot, which I think is quite interesting. Labour Party MP for West Bromwich, Tom Watson.
Thanks, Graham. Well, good morning, everyone. I wondered why Graham invited me this morning. I thought, is it because I'm the former Minister for Digital Engagement? Is it because I'm an MP and a member of the all-party video games group? Or is it because I'm an obsessive gamer? And then thought, times are quite hard, I'm not charging a fee. So thanks, Graham. Great to be here this morning. Why am I here, really? Well, I want to show you a picture of my kids, if I could. This is Batman. And this is Batman Girl, as Batman likes to call her. And Batman learnt to, it's my son Malachi, he learnt to count using the space bar of a laptop computer. And this weekend, because I knew I was here this morning, I was supposed to be writing my election manifesto, because you may have read in the papers there could be a general election called at any minute. Unfortunately, I was contending with Lego Batman on the Nintendo DS and managed to use it as a way of using Lego bricks to teach the idea of more than and less than to my boy. And it really summed up to me why we're all here today. Whatever sector of education or the industry you come from, we're all in the imagination game. And if you're a teacher, you try and capture the imagination of your kids to impart knowledge and ideas. And if you're in the industry, you're trying to corral some of the most creative talent the UK has got and wider. So today is all about imagination for me. You can take the kids down if you like there. I don't want to sort of put everyone off. So what we're going to do this morning is talk about the future and people's imagination for it. And our first speaker, I would love to denounce him from the platform because he's a political opponent of mine. And as you know, politicians do denounce each other, particularly in the build-up to elections. I'd love to do that, but I can't. I can't because Ed Vaizey is one of the good guys in Parliament. He's the Shadow Culture and Creative Industries Minister. So if his party win the election that's likely to take place on May the 6th, then he will have a very big say in how the interactive media industries are going to sort of develop. So I just want to say to you that though he's a political opponent of mine, he understands this industry inside out, and he shares your imagination for the future. So I'm going to ask Ed to come up, and we'll take some questions at the end, if that's okay as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tom. We don't want to shatter too many political illusions, but Tom and I have been good friends since certainly before I entered Parliament, and I think before Tom entered Parliament, which is quite a long time. And he too is one of the good guys in Parliament, although I shouldn't say that, of course. And he and I share a passion for the video games industry, but Tom is far more advanced in terms of his actual practice in using video games, as I think he's demonstrated. I often have to admit that I'm not a seasoned gamer. I probably gave up playing games when I was 16 or 17 and have only just returned to them by getting hold of a Wii. But it was interesting, Tom putting his kids up there, because yesterday I was playing video games online with my 3-year-old. This is becoming really personal, these remarks, on the CBeebies website. And a thought did occur to me, which is that in terms of the political climate of how the video games industry, if I'm taking it in its broadest sense before I focus on games-based learning, is regarded, I've always said it's a bit of a it's always my patter that the video games industry traditionally is only ever mentioned in Parliament when a particular MP is citing video games as being responsible for all the ills in the world, and very rarely in a positive sense. And one of the questions I'm often asked is why don't more MPs come out, as it were, and say that they happily play video games? And the answer I have to that is that I think in the last year or two the climate has changed. I'm embarrassed that I don't play video games more. And playing with my son yesterday, I was embarrassed that I hadn't put in place the technology in my house, like Wi-Fi and so on, to enable him to play video games more easily on a laptop at the breakfast table and so on. Because I'm very conscious of the fact that as he grows up, this is going to be absolutely an integral part of his life, and actually pushy parents, as well as signing their kids up to music lessons or whatever, should be signing their kids up to laptops and playing computer games, and perhaps getting hold of Two Simple's DIY software to enable them to start programming at a very early age. So I think the culture, certainly in politics and certainly at home, is changing dramatically. I came across video games, as it were, when I was given the brief to be Shadow Culture and Creative Industries Minister. I'd asked David Cameron for the brief because I had a passion for culture, and I thought it'd be quite fun as well to look after films and broadcasting. And as I have confessed on many a public platform, so it's becoming quite dull, I didn't know anything about the video games industry. And when I was briefed on it by some of the trade bodies, I thought, why on earth haven't politicians seized this extraordinary opportunity? Because here is an industry that is involved in technology, is therefore involved, as it were, in the future rather than the past, employs people who tend to study the difficult subjects that politicians are always banging on about and saying that more people should study, like maths and computer science. It's regional. You can find games companies in Brighton and Dundee and everywhere in between. And as this conference is going to show, it's got multiple applications. It's not just, as it were, a leisure activity, but the kind of technology that's used in games is now being used across the piece in health, education, defence, and so on. Tom is right that if we do win the election, I'm going to be a champion for video games, and I'm going to see my role as ensuring that every government department takes this industry seriously and understands the opportunities that you present. And there are three key areas where I think any minister who represents the industry should be looking at. The first is obviously skills. It's something that I hear a lot from the video games industry, the difficulty of getting graduates with the right skills, the importance of ensuring that courses at university and further education colleges which say computer games on them actually do what they say on the tin. I know that people like Ian Livingston and Skillset are working hard to make a difference in that area, but I think that's an area that you've really got to focus on to ensure that we're putting in place the courses that are producing the graduates with the skills that you need, that blend of technical skills as well as creativity that is so important in the industry. Graham, and it's an opportunity for me to thank Graham Brown-Martin for organising this conference. I think it's the second one he's organised, and I think it's one of the largest in the world, and it's great to see a conference that doesn't require a lot of taxpayers' money or regulation and organisation. It's from the bottom up, fantastic. Graham mentioned the importance of the lobbying for the video games industry, and I think it's a telling disconnect, if you like, that the UK Film Council has a large and established body to represent the film industry at the top table, but there isn't one commensurate body for the video games industry, and that's something I would like to look at urgently. It sounds a bit counterintuitive for a Conservative to come to the podium and say he wants to create another Quango, and certainly in this economic climate that may be difficult, but certainly I think we can be creative in how we look at that. There are existing Quangos, the UK Film Council being one, which could broaden its remit to include video games, and Nesta, which has already been mentioned, is another organisation that, as it were, is at the top table. So I think we can be creative in terms of giving video games a voice at the top table with government. And I think, again, this conference is a good illustration of why that is so vital. We've got ELSPA, we've got TIGA, we've got games-based learning. There's an urgent need, I think, to pull all this together, and as Graham said, to make sure that the games-based learning part of the sector, if you like, the sector that represents what video games can do across a whole range of different areas, is part of that discussion, and that policy is coordinated to include that much wider remit, because you represent an industry that could be transformed over the next few years with the right support from your industry representatives and the right support from government. You could really go gangbusters. You could present a huge opportunity to create jobs, to create skills, and to keep Britain moving forward. The other major issue, the third major issue, is financial support for the industry. as all of you will know, in other jurisdictions, Canada in particular, but France, South Korea as well, there is real active engagement from government, not only in supporting the industry with words, but also supporting the industry with hard cash in terms of grants and fiscal support. So I was interested when the government announced that it was looking at introducing a video games tax credit in the budget, which is as I understand it, their plan is to take the film tax credit and extend it to video games. We're going to look very carefully at that. Those of you who may have followed my remarks on the video games industry in the last couple of years will know that I have strongly supported the principle of fiscal support for the industry. I've held back from settling on one specific policy. That's for a number of reasons. If you take, for example, the film tax credit extension, that will require lobbying in Brussels. We'll have to get Brussels to reopen the film tax credit to look at that, and there may be also concerns with the industry whether it's the right vehicle to provide you with fiscal support. There's also other opportunities such as venture capital trusts and the existing R&D tax credit, which may be opportunities as well to provide fiscal support. So we want to look at that in the round and not take a hasty decision, but we will take a speedy decision because time is of the essence to get it absolutely right. And let's not also forget the wider fiscal climate in terms of just the general burdens on business, be it corporation tax rates or national insurance tax rates, which are also important factors in anyone setting up a business, which apply to all business, not just the video games industry. But we're here to talk about games-based learning, and I have to say it's a great privilege to be here and talk to you and to find out a bit about what's going on. Tom was very kind in giving the impression that I'm manically busy and carving out small parts of my day to come and talk to conferences like this, but actually it's a real opportunity for me to learn more. But Tom and I are doing a video games conference this evening as well, and I'll be going up to York as well for a video games conference in the next couple of weeks. So I do try and get out and about and talk to as many of you as possible. And I think games-based learning does what it says on the tin. It's fairly obvious that this is an industry that should be supported and backed. People like the Harvard Business Review talking about the importance of games-based learning in teaching leadership, educating people about risk. Major corporations like IBM using virtual learning to train their managers. And I'm delighted that we now have in this country a serious games institute based at the University of Coventry. I think they're here today, which is looking at the many applications that games can have across the spectrum. And if you wanted to know whether or not games-based learning has a future with the consumer, you only have to look at the Nintendo's brain training, which has sold 10 million units. I think they're here at this conference today as well, where I think people have learned from that that if you put what you might consider to be dull subjects like maths into a games-based format, suddenly you make maths a cool subject to learn, particularly for boys, and that's a massive opportunity. But I know that the military are here as well, the Army and the Navy. I've got the Defence Academy in Shrivenham in my constituency, and I know they've done a lot of research into how games-based learning can help the military in terms of its own applications, not only providing a safe environment in which failure can take place, and in a military context you can understand why that is so significant, but also the fact that they found that it's a far more motivational way of teaching people and that it reduces their training costs. So again, wins all round. Also in healthcare, we've got TrueSim, a subsidiary of Blitz Games, coming out with very sophisticated software to help train doctors and surgeons. And we've also got the Wellcome Trust presenting here today as well in terms of their own health applications. And I think, therefore, there's an opportunity for government to take games-based learning into Whitehall. It would, I think, send a strong signal and also provide a potential opportunity for the industry if government started adopting games-based learning techniques in Whitehall for civil servants and for officials. We've got a very ambitious technology manifesto which talks about opening up government data, using government, as it were, as a platform so that people like you can take the information that government has and come up with applications and ideas that can create British businesses but also help the consumer. And I think if government made an overt commitment to using games-based learning within Whitehall, that would also be a major boost for the industry. We've tried it already. If you go on the parliamentary website, there's a pretty unusable game, which is the game of how to be an MP for a day, where you go off and talk to various lobbying companies and ask them for money and various other things like that. I'd urge you to try it and see if it works. Tom already knows about the game that's whirled around the internet, which is where you work for the Prime Minister for a day and you have to dodge the odd mobile phone and try and stay in your seat during those 12 hours. But I think that the other lesson that we have to learn as policymakers is it's the games makers who should be driving these applications. What you can't do, I think, is start at the beginning, as it were, with a task, be it an education task or a health task, and then try then to learn gaming and create a game that makes it work. It's got to come from the other direction, with people who are used to making video games, who know how people play video games, who know what appeals to the consumer, to use their skills and expertise to create the kind of software and games that will really make a difference. So I'm very excited to be here. I'm thrilled that Graham has put this conference together. It's a great opportunity to bring a lot of companies that work in this area together, and I can assure you that if we win the election, what you're doing will be taken very seriously. We regard it as a huge opportunity for the UK PLC, and you'll certainly have at least one minister who will give you his 100% support and effort to make sure that you succeed. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay, we've got time for 2 or 3 quick questions to Ed. He looks like a beautiful swan there, and he's trying to play down his diary, but to get a shadow minister a week before a general election is a minor miracle. So, you know, do give him the credit he deserves. Any questions? And before I take them, can I ask Siobhan and Kareem, who are on next, to try and get to the front ready, if that's okay? Any questions, if you stick your hand in the air?
I should say that in the febrile climate that is politics at the moment, the very fact that Tom Watson is saying the election is going to be called next week is actually front page news.
Yeah, I've been predicting it for years.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Okay.
I'm glad I covered all the bases.
Good, you've done well there, Ed. I should talk about my David Cameron video game. You know, do I wear polo chic or blue or black today? How's my hair looking? You know, that kind of stuff. He did the Gordon Brown gag. I told him not to. So anyway, yeah, okay. No questions? Excellent.
Thanks, Tom.
Well done. Cheers, mate. Okay.